So hello and welcome back to the channel, guys. In today's video I wanted to be taking a little look at rallycross. There's quite a few, well there's not very many videos on YouTube that give you any detail really as regards to how to set the cars up in rallycross, how to drive the cars, and if like me you enjoy project cars but the first time you had a little look at rallycross you were like, how the hell does this car turn? It doesn't want to stop. I don't know how to get better grip. Acceleration seems really slow. There's loads of little tricks with regards to rallycross, and I just wanted to cover a little bit regarding the setup of the cars as well. I spent a little bit of time looking at how the dampers work, how the suspension's working, and I will put a little link to a video that I found really useful as regards to how different the dampers actually work in a rally car. You'll notice when I look through the setup, there's quite a few differences, but having spent maybe 2 hours setting a car up, it didn't make a blind bit of difference, to be honest. I used the default setup and made a few small changes that I would usually make on any car that I tune or set up on project cars too, and just went about setting it up the way I would normally set a car up, and it was about a second quicker than the one that I'd spent 2 hours setting up, changing all the dampers to how they should work on a rally car. It obviously doesn't make a blind bit of difference. The damper situation and the suspension works just the same, I think, on project cars, whether you're driving a normal car or whether you're driving a rally car. You still experience just as much grip, and the suspension works just as well, setting it up as you would normally set it up. So let's take a little look at the circuit. I'll give a little bit of a walkthrough around the circuit, but it's not particularly a walkthrough of the circuit, although it's a time trial that I'm taking part in currently at the moment, which I've managed to hit the top of the leaderboard with. So I'm pretty happy with a lot, pretty happy with how the car handles, but I just wanted to give a few little pointers on rallycross in general. So we're at the Hockenheim rallycross circuit. So let's take a little look. So one of the first things you're going to need to look at is the configuration of your buttons. Now I'm using the McLaren wheel, as you can see, and although the button's missing, this is my Y button, and it's only missing because the buttons on this, if you press them numerous times over and over again, you end up cracking the center of the button and it just drops off, it doesn't hold on. So two buttons that I press very regular are the A button and the Y button, and as you can see I've got Y selected as my handbrake. And if you aren't using a handbrake on rallycross, you're not gonna progress at all. The car doesn't want to turn, and you're going to induce the car turning by using the handbrake a lot. I would say nearly 100% of every corner on the circuit you're going to use the handbrake to turn the car. So that in mind, tuning setups. Let's have a look at the setup I'm using. You can see, as with many cars, I'm using a lower front tyre pressure just to give the car some front end grip, and because the car's going to slide around no matter what we're trying to do, so rear end grip is going to be paramount, but we need to get the car to turn. Brake pressure is personal preference, to be honest. I like to use as much brake pressure as I can feel and adjust with my own pedals. The brake balance, I would push towards a more central braking or a more rearward braking, something like that. Maybe even as far down as there, just because we're trying to get the car to turn but for this circuit I'm using 50-50, and obviously the brake ducts, we're not going to want them to overheat too much, so they just open a slight amount. The handbrake for me is quite a personal preference as well. If you have it up around the 100 mark, or you can go right the way up to 200, I think. Yeah, it's just too much pressure. As soon as you start pressing the handbrake button, you really don't want the car to snap as you turn the wheel. You just want it to sort of settle. It just sort of drops down, and you might need to press it a few times or hold it down longer, but it's personal preference. I think about 60 works really well. Moving on to the suspension, caster angle, try and keep the wheel fairly light. I've got my force feedback on the wheel set to 70. And if you've seen my previous video on all my settings, I use quite a light wheel when I'm doing rallycross, because you want to be able to fling the wheel left and right quite easily. And again, that's why I'm not using too much caster. Caster will add quite a bit of weight to the wheel. Camber angles, I've got these maxed out. I just want the tyres to really dig into the tarmac or into the dirt wherever you're driving. And again, like I mentioned previously, I spent a lot of time adjusting the ride heights. I think around 140 worked quite well as well. But once I started to get into the driving and everything, I just thought it was just rubbish really. The setup was brilliant, but it didn't add any time to the car at all. It wasn't bottoming out, it was running really smoothly, but it just wasn't making the car quick. So just dropping the ride height all the way down. It's not a particularly bumpy circuit, this one. You might have to adjust it on some circuits that have got a lot of undulation. But for this circuit, it's fairly flat. Spring rate again on the front is super stiff at the front to get it ultra responsive on the steering. And again, just lowering it at the rear, lowering the suspension spring rate just to aid traction really. The steering ratio, again, I'm using the McLaren wheel, so I'm not wanting to let my hands off the wheel at any time at all. 360 degrees of rotation, and the steering ratio is set very, very low as well, so it's ultra responsive with really small inputs. The anti-roll bar is, I think, 4 off maximum, just to give a little bit of front end grip, but we're trying to get all that grip at the rear. So yeah, looking at the dampers, left the bump stops up at 50 where they are, because we're just not wanting to bottom out. There's two drops or quite large undulations as you go up a ramp and stuff on this circuit. So to not let the car bottom out, these are at about 50. And again, the bump and rebound, I'd probably say about 25% more you're going to want to put through the rebound. Now, this can change dramatically on some circuits. You could have it at something around there. I wouldn't ever go twice as much on the rebound, but it's sometimes good to have a lot of rebound. Now, if you were going to set this up properly in a rally scenario, you would actually want this lower than the bump. Now, it's sort of counterintuitive, but this is what the video talks about. It sort of helps the car just to float. It's not an instant. You're not wanting the suspension to rise as fast as it can. You just want it to sort of bounce along. And for a road car, this would be just a super soft road car. It would really wallow about, but it would settle along the bumps really nicely. Now, in a supercar sort of style or a GT3 car, we want the car to be super solid. We want it to be straight back up to its suspension level as fast as possible. But yeah, this was what I settled on. As a rule of thumb, you always want the rebound to be higher than the bump. Same with the transition as well. But as you can see, it works in line with the suspension. So you can see it on the front suspension. You can see that the spring rate is higher than it is at the rear. So you want to carry that through to the dampers as well. You want the dampers to be harder at the front than they are at the rear. As you can see, that's how it's set. But you can see I've also got a higher spring rate on the rear. Again, it's just personal preference. I could have this probably down around there and it would work just as nicely. In fact, I'll leave it around there. It's quite happy to be around there. There's very little difference in the figures, to be honest. So don't get too hung up on that. Boost pressure, maximum, radiator closed. We want a little bit of engine braking just to help the car turn. And again, the gear ratio is probably quite critical on this one, just to get good acceleration out and not be having to change gears too much. We're never really going to be maxing out in 5th gear or 6th gear, but it's all to do with 1st, 2nd and 3rd on this circuit. The differentials, I've not touched them at the front. I don't think I've touched them at the rear. I've done very little, I think, with those. I could probably be worthwhile spending a little bit more time having looked at these now, because I've not particularly done a great deal with them. But yeah, that's as they are at the moment. I'm not talking about those too much. So we'll save that. Just looking at your field of view, one of the things that I would usually do is I'd usually set my wheel up. If you look at, that'd probably be where I'd used to having it. But for the rallycross circuits, I really bring the screen in a little bit, because I want to be able to see where the corners are as I'm turning the wheel. I'm just going to restart my wheel. It feels very heavy, which is a little glitch. That's much better. Okay, so as we're moving, you just want to try just pressing the handbrake. And you see how the car just turns around. Now, if you see him, if I try and just turn without using the handbrake, you see the car just doesn't want to turn at all. And it's so much easier, as you can see, to get it turning just with a little touch of the handbrake.
So if you're just getting started in rallycross, I'd certainly recommend at this point just finding a nice big open section of the circuit, preferably on the tarmac, so that you can just rally the car around really, get used to trying to handbrake the car and trying to feather the acceleration. So once you've done a turn, try not to allow the car to roll backwards and just keep the revs up so that you can sort of slide the car around, trying to almost get into a little bit of a donut, but just sort of taking a turn. You can push some of these cones out, use some of the surrounding bollards and whatnot to just set up tiny little obstacles to just get the real feeling through the pedals as to how you can sort of feather the car and just get it to move in a way you'd really want it to.
So I do all my initial braking with the actual brake pedal, and just at the last minute to get the car to turn, I just add a little bit of handbrake that I'm just pushing the button. So I get accelerating brake and then just a little bit on the handbrake, change gear and you're away again. Again, down 2 gears, a little bit of handbrake, back on the accelerator, a bit more handbrake, brake and handbrake. And like in these instances just here, you sort of want to be accelerating before you want to be accelerating if you get really early on the pedal. Just trying to get the wheels spinning. And you notice how far back I'm sort of having to brake and turn. So just a little bit of handbrake, braking hard, handbrake. It's not going to work out every time. You're going to end up crashing a heck of a lot. Just trying to learn the technique really. And again, if you just see how much it keeps just sliding if you get out onto the grass or you get out onto the rubble, just try and stick on the tarmac sections where you can. You get far better traction. A little bit of handbrake, and again just getting it to whip round. Bit of handbrake, just really tentative on the accelerator.
So I just thought I'd try and talk you through a few of the things that I'm doing on the lap, and if you can sort of spend a little bit of time looking down at my wheel and especially into my left hand thumb, you see I'm just sort of pressing on the Y button to activate the handbrake. You just sort of come into these braking areas. I'm also applying the brake as well, and then just sort of tapping just as I need to get the car to twist. So as you're trying to induce the car into turning, I'm just either holding the Y button down for a prolonged period for a long sort of handbrake, or just to adjust the angle of the car a tiny bit, I'm just sort of tapping on the Y button as I'm turning the wheel as well. So I'm sort of flicking the car in and then just sort of tapping on the button at the same time. If you can also just pay attention to what the accelerator pedal's doing as well, you'll notice that I'm not sort of 100% flat out on the accelerator pedal all the time. I'm just sort of blipping the accelerator to try and get the car to get some grip before I'm flat out. I mean, I think the straight there is probably the only time that my foot is just constantly flat down for a prolonged period of time. Other than that, I'm just sort of blipping at the accelerator. Especially out of these two hairpins, you're sort of trying to keep the revs up on the engine so it doesn't bog down, so that you can get a nice bit of traction. So you're always sort of trying to keep the car in a forward momentum. And again, you'll see I'm just losing time here, staying on the dirty lines. You sort of want to be trying to stick to where you've got tarmac coming through these sections. You'll see on the fastest lap that I posted, which I did manage to catch the footage. Again, I got a nice exit off the first corner there. But yeah, you'll see on the fast lap, I really do try and stick to a lot of the tarmac sections of this circuit, staying nice and tight through here. And again, just running a tiny bit wide over the curve there, and braking nice and early for this one so you can get the car turned. And again, here's just probably the most important corner, staying hugging on the left hand side there along the tarmac section. You can see there I've just totally destroyed the tyre barriers and probably start the lap again. But again, as you come through this section, you're sort of trying to get the car not to run too wide. You want to be really nice and straight through the exit there. You can see I just aborted the lap. Again, yeah, just getting the car nice and straight and early on the power. You can see it's a fairly good exit, but not as good as the previous one. And again, you're not wanting to hook the curb too much, but keep nice and tight in, nice and tight through this section as well. It's a really hard section to nail this, because you're wanting to keep the car moving, but not sliding backwards in any of the corners really. It's always wanting to be either sideways or going forward. And again, yeah, just keep nice and tight around there. Stay on the tarmac, and just a little bit too much rotation through there. Just lose a little bit of time. And again, just trying to miss that wall. It's a really hard section to nail, as you can see. So as you can see on the approach here, it's nice and slowly coming up, flick it in, and nice straight exit there, and you can see in the side mirror get a nice run out of that corner. So I'll just leave you with this lap to run out, but thanks for watching guys. I hope I've raised a few little points that have been helpful, and if you've enjoyed that video or this video, please do hit the like button and add a few comments, and thanks for watching guys. Until next time, ciao for now.